Welcome to Let Go, Let EFT, where we are learning and leaning in with you, with your hosts Michelle Puster and Dr. Laura Spiller. EFT is a beautiful model helping people connect with themselves and the people that matter the most, developed by Dr. Sue Johnson. All right, today we're going to be talking about raw spots.
Ouch.
Yes. Something that's really helpful to be aware of. So maybe we should first define it. And we're going to use Dr. Sue Johnson's book, Hold Me Tight, to define how she defines a raw spot. So she says it's a hypersensitivity formed by moments in a person's past or current relationships when an attachment has been repeatedly neglected, ignored, or dismissed. So first, what stands out to you from that sentence, Dr. Spiller?
Yeah, I think it's a hypersensitivity. So it's something that doesn't take a lot of pressure to hurt.
Right. Like another analogy is tennis elbow. Like you can't see it. It seems fine, but you bump it and it's like, ouch, pain, like to the core.
Right. And then the other piece that's, I think, important about that definition is, from attachment needs that have not been met in a painful way. And it can come from this relationship and past relationships.
Right. So oftentimes it might be from a relationship when the person was growing up. That's a very common raw spot. And however, like it's saying, it could also be from this relationship, especially if they've been together for a long time. It could be from other current relationships in a person's life. And Dr. Sue Johnson says it's the 2 Ds, emotionally deprived or deserted. So this time when someone was emotionally deprived or deserted, either in a significant moment or repeatedly, especially repeatedly.
I'm just thinking too about how it speaks to the adaptiveness, right, of our attachment system, of our nervous system. How much does that make sense that if we've been deserted or deprived, right, of the connection, of the belonging, of the safety that gives us balance, that we would develop this inner alarm or warning system that says, danger, danger.
Right. I'm going to be let down. I'm going to be dropped. I'm going to be deserted. Mm-hmm. And then we come alive to keep that from happening, right? It's like the little baby in the video with the still face mom. If you haven't seen it, you can search it on YouTube, where the baby has a big reaction when the mom is still face, right? She's being emotionally deprived or deserted. And that's that big reaction that we see coming from our partners.
Again, so adaptive, right? It's hardwired into us. We like try to get the person's attention back, or we try to keep ourselves in some way from being hurt again.
Right. This is when we need our partner the most, and the reaction, at least about the situation, might not quite match what's happening. So what do you feel like is hard for us as therapists about raw spots?
Yeah. That the fact that it doesn't take a lot of pressure to produce a lot of pain, it can just bump against this sensitivity or this raw spot. And so as therapists, we experience it the same way often, I think, that the partners do. That we're kind of going along, trying to have some communication, and suddenly there's like, and I don't know about you, but my nervous system goes, too, when it's unexpected.
Right. Which when we first meet couples, I think that's what's difficult about raw spots is we don't know what their raw spots are. We don't know their raw spots from growing up, from other relationships, from this relationships. And that's really how we discover them, as we are walking along beside them, and then, you know, this big reaction happens, or we're seeing them interact and big reaction happens, or they're retelling a conflict that they had from the last time we saw them. And they're both sort of like, you know, maybe confused. One person's probably confused and angry. You know, their reactions are different, but a lot of times there is confusion because there's a huge reaction. Like that's one great way to look for it, right? If it's like the situation warrants like a 3, you know, a 3 to a 5, but the reaction is like a 10. That is a surefire signal that somebody has found a raw spot, right? Because the reaction's enormous, but the situation's like, I don't really get it.
You know, and that's, you know, I think about historically learning EFT, that's one of those places where I would feel lost, you know, like I've got to do something quickly to fix this. I don't want the, you know, receiving partner to be hurt or scared or to reject or leave the partner that's experiencing the big reaction to the raw spot. And so that, you know, sense of trying to smooth things out or fix it in the moment can create that panic in us. Like, oh my gosh, what do I do with this?
Right. Yeah. When we don't know what it's about, it can feel very scary. It can feel very like all of a sudden we're following our EFT map and we're doing great. And then like we're just blown off the map. We're like, what just happened? Yeah. It can be very dysregulating. And without even the thought of raw spot popping into our head, we might, you know, just really be derailed from the work we were doing. We might miss that it's a raw spot. There's a lot of different things that can happen. But if we at least know, okay, raw spots exist, they're common, we're deaf, everybody has them. It's just a matter of time before we bump into one. Then we can start looking for it, and it's not so dysregulating. It doesn't have to completely derail us from what we were doing. We might decide we need to go into this raw spot and leave what we were doing, but it's like a conscious decision versus, I don't know what's happening here.
Yes. Right. So what do we do? Yeah, we're saying, you know, here you have some tools. You don't have to panic. You don't have to feel lost. You know, when you see that, you know, you can say to yourself, oh, I bet a raw spot's been hit. Yeah. What do you recommend that, you know, for us to do in those moments?
Well, I like what George Fowler says, that there's a good reason, that there must be a good reason. That is, no matter what someone says or does, you know, especially the bigger it is. If I move from a place of there must be a good reason that this caring, sensitive human being who loves this person just had this enormous reaction, there must be a good reason. So if I move from a place of compassion and curiosity and say, all right, like you had this huge reaction, tell me more about that. Help me understand. She said or did this, and then you lost it. Can you help me understand what you were thinking?
Yeah.
Can't think of a good example. When she said or did this.
Yeah. Yes.
What was going through your mind?
Yeah, I like that. That, you know, it draws our attention and our focus, and that's where we bring our compassion and our curiosity. Whoa, you know, something happened here that I really want to know more about. It was really important. And I'm practicing naming the concept of a raw spot. Wow, I'm wondering if maybe a raw spot has been hit upon, you know, or there's just something, you know, that really goes deeper here in this moment than what's on the surface.
Right.
Slow down and have some curiosity about what's underneath that reaction. You know, I'll even say, I think we maybe hit a raw spot and explain what that is.
Yeah. And I'll say that to them too, that there must be a good reason. If you had this big reaction, there must be a good reason, which I think is really important for the person who had the big reaction to hear that. And it's really good for their partner, because their partner is probably hurt or upset by the big reaction. And the person who had the big reaction might be kind of like, staunchly defending their ground, but they also might feel ashamed or embarrassed by their reaction. So you're acknowledging like, hey, I get it. Your big reaction makes sense. I don't necessarily know what it's about yet, but there's a good reason. I'm assuming that there's a good reason. So that kind of like lowers the defenses, right? Naming it, like you're saying, as a raw spot, explaining what a raw spot is, lowers their defenses so we can get closer.
Yeah. And I think we were talking about it earlier, that it widens their lens too, so that they have they're maybe not seeing their partner as the problem or themselves as the problem. We're kind of adding in, the history influences us. Your adaptive nervous system, right, does what it does to protect you. So it can help them, get a little bit, have more space, I think, for their experience and their emotions, because if we're helping them see this is not that your reactions are the problem or your emotions are the problem, or, that you're messing things up in this relationship, and kind of help them see how it makes sense.
Yeah. And I think I look at it like, I might even say to them, if I'm in a silly mood, like, help me rewind, like, let's slow this down Matrix style. Like, they don't really even remember. All they know is there was a giant blowout fight. Words were said. Then they were sleeping in separate rooms. And sometimes they can't remember what was the fight about. Like, and essentially, when we were trying to slow it down, we're trying to see when and what nerve was hit, right? So sometimes I'll share this story with my clients, but when my husband and I were in EFT therapy, we had a raw spot moment, and he hit on one of my raw spots. I didn't know why we had this enormous fight. I didn't know what my enormous reaction was about. And it was so small and insignificant. So he basically, we're unpacking the groceries, and he puts another box of tacos. He puts a box of tacos away and sees that there's like already 3 boxes. And he's like, I think we got enough tacos for the week. And it struck a nerve. And I couldn't and I don't remember what I said, like, well, I have to get all the groceries and I always have to do everything. And why do I always have to do everything? And of course, now he's reacting to that because I've just attacked him and how he never helps me, which of course isn't true. And so now he's defending himself, and, and we're just going back and forth, and we're both confused and upset, and who knows. And so when we sit down with the therapist and she's asking us questions, and she's like, well, how did this begin and what happened? And, oh yeah, well, he said something about the taco shells. Well, why did that bother you? What were you thinking about? Well, it's my job as a parent, as essentially it boiled down to my role as a mother and my role as, my partner role is to do the groceries. And essentially it felt like he was saying I was failing. It wasn't good enough. And of course, this goes back to like family of origin stuff and how I saw my parents interact and the pressure I was putting on myself to be, what I saw as perfect, which if you're perfect, you get the right amount of taco shells.
Right.
I mean, it's so silly now, but it struck this nerve. And I really needed her help to understand what the heck happened for me. I didn't know. I didn't get it on my own. And it was also helpful for my partner to see like, oh, she has these raw spots and I can say things unintentionally, like unknowingly, that I hit on something and she has this big reaction. It has nothing to do with me.
Yes.
And that made it easier for him to not feel so attacked and just be like, oh, it's just like, it's if something just dropped on my toe and I was like,
Oh, I like that metaphor. Yes. And then the caring instinct that that we're trying to nurture in couples has more space to come up and to be activated.
Right. Like, are you
that
okay?
makes sense, that you would feel, that your role is so important and you don't want to feel like a failure there.
Right. Right. So these raw spots, they can come up for couples all the time. And sometimes they are not going to look like on the surface they make any sense. That's why the taco shell story, I think, is because it's like, what? They're not going to look like they make any sense, but they make sense.
And I like that too, because I think it does have to happen experientially, that we don't have, and maybe some people do, but I don't know. It took me years of being an EFT therapist to realize my own raw spots. So I'm very aware that I can't ask my clients, well, tell me about your raw spots. And they're going to be able to like, well, here they are. So it really is an experiential exploration where we're coming across them.
Right. That's just how it's going to go. We're going to come across them, and that's okay and normal. And when we do, then the best, I don't know about for you, but for me, that's the best indicator. If a reaction is like a 10 or 20, right? And the situation's like a 3 or a 5, pretty good chance there's a raw spot there.
Right.
So what's a good takeaway, you think, for therapists to think about in the next session with couples?
That your responses are your best tool. If you feel you have attunement, so you are going to feel the uh-oh when your couple is feeling an uh-oh. And that's okay. That means you're with them, you're attuned to them, you're in sync with them, that you've got the ability to feel their cycle coming up in the room, and that take a couple of deep breaths and say, oh, maybe, is this a raw spot?
Yes.
And as you said, bring compassion and curiosity to that.
Right. Yes. And if you have a session and it was like, whoa, it felt like a whirlwind, what just happened? Call a colleague. Like, that is one thing that I learned to do instead of like going into the shame, I'm not doing this well spiral. I would reach out to you. I'd reach out to another colleague and I'd say, I just had this session. I don't know what happened. And then it's like, oh, is this what, like, then we can process it. And we're like, oh, okay. So I hit a raw spot, or so-and-so hit a raw spot. Oh, now I can go back into the next session feeling more regulated, feeling like, let me get curious about this. So even if we don't catch it in the session, we usually get another chance,
That's right.
We usually get another chance. It's okay if we didn't catch it the very first time.
Absolutely. There's nothing, we can bring it up in the next session, or we can just keep it in our pocket for when it will happen again.
Because it will.
It will.
Yeah. So I guess it's similar to last time when the enactments don't go well. Raw spots are there.
Yeah.
An eye out for them, keep an ear out for them. Like you said, keep your, check in with yourself, how you're feeling. You're going to notice them, and try to think of them as a helpful tool.
Yes.
Like, this is helpful information. I'm going to help the couple understand this. This is going to be helpful that we came across this, even though it might feel like at first.
And we probably said this in one of the last programs, but Ryan Rana talks about going to the orthopedic, for his knee, and the doctor moving the knee all around, looking for where he goes, ouch, in some ways that's what we have to do too. I mean, we need to find the ouch, because that's where no one is with them, or they get, moved into reactivity that's not going to help them be closer, but actually makes them more alone and disconnected. So that's where we have to be with them.
Right.
Looking for the ouch.
Right. That's right. And we can do it.
We can do it.
So if you all would like to share with us a show idea you have, please leave it in the comments below. If you have a language that you use around raw spots, something that you use that couples connect with that helps you describe it to them, share that in the comments below. We'd love to hear your ideas and how you get creative with raw spots.
Great. Thanks, Michelle.
Thanks, Dr. Laura. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.